Hello everyone! Welcome to my channel, The Glammed Rebel. I hope everyone's having a good day. Please like, comment, and subscribe for daily updates. Finn makes shocking discovery. Paris's lost father Bill. Throughout his life, Finn Hastings had always taken great satisfaction in his ability to meticulously pay attention to detail, as well as his ability to piece together even the smallest evidence to uncover a concealed reality. But nothing in his years as a cardiothoracic surgeon or as the husband of Steffi Forrester could have prepared him for the discovery that he made late one evening in Grace Buckingham's private medical library. He was completely unprepared for it. At first, it seemed like nothing at all. In the process of Grace's preparation for retirement from her clinic, Finn had promised to assist her in sorting through decades worth of patient files. However, he was unaware that Grace was harboring secrets that were more profound than any graft or valve replacement he had ever performed. In spite of this, he managed to accidentally knock over a little stack of manila envelopes that were stamped with Grace's lovely calligraphy. As a result, one of the envelopes escaped and fell to the floor. Its paper had a very slight yellowing over time. Curiosity reached its highest point. As he unfurled the document, Finn looked at the heading and became still. A sperm donor agreement that is anonymous. Before he even read Grace's neatly composed notes, his heart was already beating extremely fast. The boilerplate language of the law that guarantees complete confidentiality to the donor and makes no reference of the donor's identity. A clinical declaration that the sperm was going to be used for in vitro fertilization for a woman who, according to the date on the document, was going to become a mother in the near future was the only indication of the source of the sperm. His thoughts were racing. Grace was a woman of science and propriety, and he knew her to be somewhat of a perfectionist. So what was the impetus for such a contract? There were no additional hints to be found in the clinic's records log. The identity of the donor was never revealed, and Grace's personal notes did not mention the presence of a father role in the life of the child who received the organs. The fact that Grace's handwriting was the only thing that could convince Finn that this document was more than just a formality. An emotional engagement that went beyond the scope of her professional responsibilities was suggested by her markings in the margins, which were tiny stars placed next to important paragraphs. Finn was motivated by an unexplainable pull, and he took the contract with him. Later that night, while he was alone in his study, he conducted a covert search of Grace's patient records, cross-referencing dates and appointments until he found a single name that kept coming up multiple times. The woman who Grace had mentored, Paris Buckingham, was the daughter of the British millionaire Alexander Buckingham, who had disappeared from Paris's life many years ago. Sophia Buckingham had been Grace's mentor. During the process of retrieving Paris's file, Finn felt a chill run down his spine. The date of birth was completely in line with the time frame of the donor contract, and the medical records had comments concerning Grace's involvement in Paris's conception. These remarks were always attributed to research rather than obstetric care. Finn's heartbeat quickened quickly. If the conception of Paris had occurred through the use of anonymous donor sperm, and if the donor in question was a person of significant importance, the repercussions may have been felt across families, boardrooms, and even the most guarded corners of Los Angeles society. He sat back in his chair, his thoughts continually going through the various alternatives. If Grace had wanted to protect Paris, would she have maintained such a secret? Another possibility is that the anonymity was the result of a more planned process. First, he made the decision to do a covert DNA test to determine whether or not Paris's genetic markers were compatible with those of any members of the Buckingham or Forrester networks. Additionally, he intended to discover any connection to Bill Spencer, who, according to Finn's most profound concerns, could be more than just a distant donor. Bill was known to Finn as the cruel media magnate whose empire dominated almost every business in the area, a private individual whose public persona alternated between being a pleasant patron and an aggressive dealmaker. If it turned out that Bill was Paris's biological father, the Spencer dynasty would collapse and Paris's identity would be completely redefined in an instant. Under the premise of necessary follow-up tests for Paris's chronic allergy condition, Finn arranged for a covert blood sample from Paris the following day, after she had worked an unusually arduous double shift in the mines. Additionally, he obtained a vial of blood from Bill Spencer from the laboratory at the hospital. Bill had been confined for a short period of time for the purpose of carrying out an elective cardiac screening, and Finn had requested that a little sample be kept. A few weeks later, Finn conducted polymerase chain reactions, extracted DNA, and analyzed genetic markers side by side in the privacy of Grace's laboratory, where he had access to the keys by virtue of his long-time collaboration with her. When the readouts began to glow on his display, confirming a match that was so accurate that the statistical possibility of error was less than 1 in a billion, Finn paused, his palm hesitating over the keyboard. Although she was the cherished daughter of Grace's protégé and the granddaughter of British finance royalty, Paris Buckingham was no less than Bill Spencer's child. As he gazed at the names Paris Buckingham and William Spencer shown next to each other on the screen, he experienced a tug of gravity at the center of his chest. He was well aware that he ought to inform Steffi. It is recommended that he inform either Liam or Wyatt, or even Paris herself. The tempest that would follow, however, has the potential to swallow all of them, demolish Steffi's fragile peace in the midst of her family upheaval, and set brother against brother in a conflict over Spencer publications. Therefore, Finn waited. During this time, Paris went about her daily activities without being aware that the beginning of the end of her lifetime quest for identity was about to occur. She proceeded with her lectures at the university, her participation in charity galas, as well as her late-night dinners with Wyatt and Liam Spencer during the evening. She enjoyed a sense of belonging among the Spencers, although her genealogy was associated with another family, a mystery that Grace had promised would be revealed. Paris, however, was aware of a shift in the atmosphere when the time was ripe. In the past few weeks, Grace's whisper in the corridor, the stealthy looks of her lab staff, and the way Finn had appeared to be more distant and troubled were all things that might be observed. With the moonlight casting deep shadows on his serious face, Paris returned to the Buckingham estate one evening after attending a lengthy charity function. There, she discovered Finn waiting on the marble veranda outside the Buckingham house. 2 envelopes were presented to him. The one she held in her hands was the original donor contract, which was made of yellowed paper that was brittle. 2 printed DNA readouts with the labels PB and W/dose were found on the other. As Paris read the headlines, she found herself gasping for air. She then turned her attention to Finn's eyes, which glowed with a mixture of contrition and determination. In the midst of the facts being thrown at her, he remained silent. She was the daughter of Bill Spencer. The information completely shattered her sense of identity, and in the blink of an eye, it entirely reshaped her conceptions of what it means to be loyal and with family. She eventually spoke, and her voice was shaking as she did so. As Finn nodded and prepared to lay out the stunning facts, the decades of secrets, and the reckoning that would follow, he announced, "My father, Bill Spencer." He swallowed hard and started to lay out the evidence. On the other hand, Paris interrupted him, her sobs making his eyesight hazy. "I require some time." Leaving Finn to deal with the repercussions of his finding on his own, she went back inside the house and retreated. It was possible that the revelation of Paris's paternity could have resulted in a public crisis at any point. Additionally, it was Justin Barber, the ever-vigilant counsel for Bill Spencer, who was the first person to recognize the vortex that was creating itself. The legal minefields that the family faced had been traversed by Justin for a long time with unflappable composure. Nevertheless, the wheels of justice began to spin in his head when Quinn Carpenter informed him of a murmur that had been heard in the Spencer lobby from an unknown source. The whisper was that someone had seen Finn holding Grace Buckingham's contract. After realizing that having control of this secret meant having ultimate leverage, Justin, whose allegiance to Bill was only equaled by his own ambition, realized that this secret was his. He walked into Quinn's loft, which was decorated in an exquisite minimalist style. She was waiting there, her eyes glistening with excitement at the possibility of utilizing the bombshell to her advantage. Justin agreed to take possession of Grace's contract and to initiate discreet inquiries into Paris's medical records in exchange for Quinn's silence on previous grievances and a share in whatever fortune Bill would dole out to contain the scandal. At the same time, Justin assured Bill that he was the only person who could be relied upon to manage this crisis without compromising his integrity. Bill Spencer's generally unshakable demeanor began to show signs of weakness when Justin presented him with the contract and DNA proof in his glass-walled office, which overlooked the downtown area of Los Angeles. In the same way that somebody might watch his empire fall apart, he stared at the facts. His child, who was born in secret and reared as the daughter of another family, is now in a position to claim inheritance rights, public acknowledgement, and possibly even a board seat at Spencer Publications. The terms were spelt out by Justin with a low and measured voice as he leaned in closer. Use $500 million to establish a trust for the city of Paris. It is recommended that Justin be appointed as a special counsel who will be granted complete confidentiality and the ability to veto any public disclosure. Or they may face the alternative, which is a paternity litigation that would be the subject of tabloids, would bring about the destruction of stock values, would prompt congressional examination of his media assets, and would permanently tarnish the Spencer brand. Although the weight of Justin's ultimatum hung in the air like a guillotine, Bill tightened his hands until his knuckles became white. In the meantime, Wyatt and Liam Spencer, who had spent their entire lives striving to win their father's approval, experienced a transition in the ground beneath them. The brothers confronted each other in the marble lobby of Spencer Publications. They were unaware of the specifics, but they had a feeling that the rumors that were circulating in the corporate hallways were a portent of things going wrong. Urgent yet hushed voices were heard. Wyatt strode through the room while running his hand through his hair, which shattered the calm demeanor that he consistently projected to investors. One of Papa's assistants informed me of the situation when he spoke. His eyes widened in panic when he mentioned something concerning DNA, donor contracts, and Grace Buckingham. Liam let out a brief laugh that was devoid of any sense of humor. Therefore, we now have a sister, a daughter who was born outside of our marriage. The number of additional skeletons that he is hiding in his closets is unknown. When Wyatt finally stopped pacing, he looked to his brother with a pallid expression. Should her father acknowledge her, she will be entitled to everything. It would be too late for us, you and I both. It is possible that even Mom's share of the company will be reduced. The jaw of Liam was clenched. Furthermore, in the event that he does not acknowledge her, she will sue us and drag us through the mud regardless. It's a lose-lose situation. As they came to the realization that the empire that their father had established may be taken away from them, not as a result of an adversarial takeover, but rather due to the most basic biological truth, their competition dissipated in a common panic. It is more important to have blood than stockholders. There was a palpable sense of anxiety in the Spencer home as the sun went down on yet another day of corporate maneuvering. During the time that Justin was drafting the trust agreement, Bill was watching over his shoulder. Paris making her way back to Grace's old study to reread the donor contract to find any potential flaws. Finn paced the hallways of the Buckingham Clinic, plagued by the thought that his finding had the potential to either save or destroy lives within the facility. On top of everything else, the question continued to haunt them like a ghost. Is it possible that love and loyalty would last when put to the test by the most fundamental ties of family? Or would those who are brave and beautiful be witness to a breach that is so profound that no amount of wealth or influence could repair it? One thing was certain, but only time would tell what would happen. Los Angeles would never again be the same. Nothing would ever be the same. Upon his return to Los Angeles, Paris Buckingham experienced the sensation of stepping into a storm that he had created for himself. Her shoulders were squared against the late afternoon glare as she walked off the private flight with a single carry-on bag. Her heart was hammering at every flash of cameras and whisper that went down the jetway. Although reporters were clamoring for a statement and thrusting their microphones in her direction, she gave a controlled and measured nod. My father is who I am coming to see. There's neither more nor less." At that precise instant, the entire world shrunk down to the tiny strip of red carpet that she was walking on beneath her heels, and the name that was waiting on the marquee at the opposite end. Headquarters of Spencer Publications Limited. Upon entering the glittering foyer, Paris saw that the marble flooring had been cleaned to such a high degree that she could see her reflection. Silently, security personnel separated themselves for her, their credentials shining brightly in the low lighting. It had been reported that she had arrived earlier. The members of the board exchanging apprehensive glances at their mahogany workstations, the assistants pausing in the hallways, and Wyatt and Liam Spencer emerging from opposing wings, their haste showing their nerves. All of these things occurred simultaneously. While she was walking by them, Paris managed to muster only a sliver of a smile for herself. Later on, when she had established her position, there would be time for brotherly reconciliations to take place. For now, she was solely focused on one thing. It was Bill Spencer, in his corner office, which faced the city skyline like a king surveying his realm. He waited for her. He was clutching the large binder that Justin had produced, which contained sheets of legally binding documents that promised recognition, inheritance, and the right to call him Dad. While Paris was standing in the doorway, she closed her eyes and waited for a moment as a flood of memories and unwritten possibilities filled her mind. Those were the fairs where she had been perplexed by the absence of her resemblance in the crowd, and the hospital halls where she had experienced a sense of loss that she could not explain. Grace Buckingham's reassuring grin, which was provided by the counselor. Bill emerged from behind his gigantic desk, which had been the embodiment of power and control in the past, and now he was a man who had been stripped bare by the irrefutable truth that blood was present. The fitted suit he was wearing made a little opening when he extended his hand in an uncertain manner. "It is Paris." One phrase contained an entire universe. Embarrassment and pride and fear and a daughter's touch that went against the established norms. "To my father, hello." As if to calm the raging heartbeat that was going on beneath him, he brought his other hand to his chest. "Aye," he started, and then he closed his eyes as if to conjure up the words that could break the silence that had lasted for decades. As Paris waited, the silence that surrounded them was dense with unsaid anguish and promise that had not yet been tested. At long last he spoke, his voice low and instructive, and said, "I am so sorry." Tears began to fill up in her eyes. In a harsh and determined manner, Paris shook her head. "We do not have time for sorrow. We have time for truth," she said as she took a deep breath for the purpose of studying and raised her hand to indicate the leather chair that was located opposite his desk. "They have been read by me. There is a trust fund waiting for me, and I am aware that there is a position on the board, but I am not here for the money or the power." A frown formed on Bill's face. "So I'm here because I'm looking for a father figure." In a direct manner, Paris addressed his eyes. "Before I can get to know you as Mr. Spencer, the giant of industry, I need to get to know you as Bill. Lunches without lawyers and outings without bodyguards are what I look forward to. I would like for you to visit my world, and thereafter I will visit yours." The fortress that Bill had constructed around his heart began to show the first signs of cracking as his eyes softened. With his fingertips contacting hers across the tabletop, he reached forward and touched hers. "I, too, am interested in that." Both Wyatt and Liam were observing the situation from behind frosted glass as they hovered in the hallway outside of the office. Paris's self-assured posture, Bill's contrite countenance, and the first genuine idea of paternal love that blossomed between them were all things that they witnessed. They sensed a fragile peace growing in the place where there had been friction in the past. After taking a few steps back, Wyatt exchanged a glance with Liam, whose shoulders became somewhat more relaxed with time. Each of them would fight their battles on a different day. Today was the beginning of something new. Grace Buckingham was waiting by the lifts beneath the lobby, and Finn Hastings and Dr. Justin Barber were standing on either side of her. When Grace saw Paris emerge hand in hand with Bill, they were no longer strangers, but rather father and daughter. strengthening their link under the brilliant Los Angeles sun. Grace's eyes flooded with tears as she witnessed this. Finn exhaled a breath that he had just realized he had been holding in for a moment. Justin gave himself permission to grin, even if it was the smallest and most sincere smile he had given in months. After capturing Grace's attention with a glance over her shoulder, Paris expressed her appreciation by nodding her head. At that one moment, all of the confidential information, the betrayals, and the legal maneuvers vanished, and they were replaced by something that was significantly more potent. Paris was carried into the next chapter of her life as the doors of the lift closed on them. It was a chapter in which she finally belonged with the guy who had inadvertently fashioned her future long before she knew who he was. The bold and beautiful world held its breath as the lights of Los Angeles flickered on beneath the dark sky. They were getting ready to hear the story of a daughter who was reclaimed, a father who was redeemed, and a family that was reborn for the first time. Feel free to share any video requests in the comments. I'll try to make a video about it. Stay connected with the Glammed Rebel for all the latest updates, spoilers, and deep dive recaps. See you in the next video. Stay safe and healthy. May God keep you safe. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell button for daily updates.